London, high noon. The clock strikes 12, and in that instant the impossible happens. A royal guard steps out of formation, not during training, not off duty, but right in the middle of the Queen's Horse Guards parade, in front of 200 tourists and a dozen live-streaming phones. He moves his rifle, but something's wrong. It's not the regulation weapon, it's sleek, black, civilian. Then a shout pierces the cold December air. He's not one of them. Other screams. A stroller tips over. Crowds scatter like startled birds. The captain yells, "Stand down." But the guard doesn't stop. He takes one more step. Two. His hand moves toward his coat, and that's when the palace gates slam shut. Steel bolts lock with a deafening clang. Security units emerge from both corners of the square. The horses rear up. Chaos spreads. But in the far corner of the formation, one man does not move. Warrant Officer David Callahan. He's been standing guard longer than most men have been alive. His back is straight, his boots still, but his eyes locked, focused, unblinking. He's not looking at the gun or the panic or even the crowd. He's watching the man's feet, the way he turned, the half-beat hesitation, the rhythm that doesn't match any formation drilled into the core. Too soft, he thinks. Too smooth. That step's not trained, not royal. The imposter's face is calm, but Callahan sees the twitch beneath the eye, the tension in the jaw, the subtle shift of weight from left heel to right toe, a dead giveaway. That man, Callahan thinks, never served a day in Her Majesty's Guard, and now he's inside the gates. The sky above London was a dull sheet of steel. No wind, no birds. Just the low hum of foot traffic and the distant clip-clop of horses being prepared behind the stables. Inside the East Barracks, the guards were assembling. One by one, they suited up, scarlet tunics pressed crisp, boots shined like obsidian bearskin hats, centered with exacting symmetry. At the far end of the locker room, a young man zipped up the front of his uniform. No one paid him much attention. He was tall, silent, efficient, too efficient. He didn't speak. Didn't laugh at the usual jabs between rookies. He adjusted his collar with surgical precision, strapped on his belt like it was second nature. And yet, his left shoulder sagged barely a fraction of an inch. The kind of detail only a tailor or a veteran would spot, or a man like Callahan. But Callahan wasn't in the locker room. He was already out in the yard, briefing the captain. And so no one noticed as the imposter slid into line with the others. 2 corridors away, a retinal scanner blinked green. The exit door clicked open. He was inside. No one asked questions. The uniform spoke louder than any ID badge. And at that hour, when the final pre-parade checklist was underway, no one had time to double-check a face. The imposter kept his head down, mimicked the posture, the gait, the breathing. It was almost perfect. Almost. Outside, tourists were already forming ranks behind the security rails. A child sat on her father's shoulders, pointing at the horses. An elderly couple whispered about the Coldstream Guards like they were watching legends return from stone. And somewhere in that sea of faces, someone else was watching. A man in a brown coat, wool scarf, holding a newspaper he never read. He was facing the wrong direction, facing the barracks. His eyes locked onto the tall guard stepping into formation, and beneath the newspaper, his hand gripped a radio. Target is in. Repeat, target is in. Phase 2 begins at 1200 hours sharp. The voice on the other end replied, understood, and the old one, a beat, still standing, same spot as always. And so the clock ticked closer to noon. While hundreds gathered for a show they thought was routine, 2 men were walking into each other's stories. One a ghost in a stolen skin. The other, a sentinel who hadn't blinked in 40 years. But before steel met steel, something else would have to break first. Time. 12 years ago, his name was Adrian Shaw. Born in Leeds, Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, top of his class in tactical deception. Commended twice for operations abroad, once in Syria, once in Sierra Leone. But he didn't retire, didn't get discharged. He vanished. 1 month before he was scheduled to be promoted to captain, Adrian disappeared during a classified training exercise. No body, no trace, only rumors that he'd walked away from the mission, walked away from the army, from the crown. The official record listed him as MIA, presumed dead, but David Callahan had never believed it. "You can't teach someone how to vanish," he once said, unless he already knew how. Inside the parade formation, Adrian stood perfectly still. The stolen uniform fit just right. The weight of the bearskin hat kept his face shadowed, but beneath the fabric and metals that weren't his was a man with a very real reason to be there. Taped beneath his sleeve, a transmitter. Inside his boot, a folded piece of paper, coordinates, timings. A message meant for someone who had once betrayed him and someone who still stood guard behind those palace walls, because this wasn't just infiltration. It wasn't about espionage. It was personal. Callahan, meanwhile, remained outside the gates. The crowd behind him had no idea that history was repeating itself. He'd seen this once before. Same gate, same tension, same eyes pretending to be hollow. Back in Belfast, 1986, an IRA mole had made it halfway into a military base before David caught the tremble in his left index finger. Only this time it wasn't a war zone. It was Buckingham's front door. And if he was wrong, if he called it too early, he'd be the one retired, not the traitor. 11:59. Adrian's right thumb pressed gently against the transmitter switch under his cuff. In 3 minutes, the royal carriage would pass through the inner courtyard. 2 more guards would rotate from the north gate. That would leave a narrow corridor, exactly 25 seconds wide, to reach the command wing. Unless someone broke formation, unless someone remembered the way he used to walk. Callahan exhaled. He could feel it now, like a vibration in the floor, something off in the rhythm. The shape of the silence was wrong, not fear, intent. He tapped the butt of his rifle twice. The ancient signal. The captain didn't flinch, but he heard it. David's eyes didn't move, but his voice, deep and steady, whispered just loud enough to ride the breeze. "He's not one of us." The crowd didn't see it happen, not at first. They were watching the horses. They always watched the horses. The ceremonial parade had begun, precision drums, synchronized boots, and the gleam of cold steel under a cloudless sky. Tourists held up their phones. Children sat on shoulders. A toddler near the front clapped along to the rhythm. It all looked beautiful, perfect. But 20 seconds in, the formation pivoted at the northwest corner of the square. And that's when the first guard fell. He didn't stumble. He dropped stiff like timber, his rifle clattering beside him. A sharp breath swept through the crowd. Was it heatstroke, a misstep? No one moved to help. Royal guards aren't to be touched, not even by each other. But then Adrian stepped forward, exactly 2 paces, exactly off rhythm. A single break in the formation. Callahan's heart clenched. There it is. The signal. The fall had been planned, a fake collapse to disrupt the tempo. And in that flicker of confusion, Adrian reached down not to help the man, but to retrieve something from his belt. A key, tiny, metallic, hidden under a ceremonial clasp. To anyone else, it looked like an act of aid. To Callahan, it looked like a gun being loaded. From his position near the gate, the captain shifted slightly. His fingers brushed the emergency trigger under his glove, a silent call to the inner security line. But it was too late. Adrian had what he needed. He returned to formation, slipped the key into a hidden pocket, and looked straight ahead, but Callahan saw it. The eyes, they blinked. Inside the palace, the secondary gates began to unlock, a preset to open on schedule. Adrian's timing was flawless. If everything held in 2 minutes, the service wing would be exposed for just long enough. Just long enough to deliver the message, or something worse. And still no one acted, because protocol said, do not break formation unless ordered, and orders hadn't come. But then a sound cut through the crisp air. Not a drum, not a trumpet, a single voice. Low, rough, and old. Break. It was David Callahan. He'd only ever said that word once in 39 years. During a terror drill in 97. This wasn't a drill. He stepped out of line. One boot forward. Another. The entire square seemed to hold its breath. Adrian turned his head just slightly, his eyes narrowing beneath the shadow of the bearskin hat. He knew that voice. The moment David Callahan stepped forward, time seemed to tear just slightly at the edges. No one moved, not the tourists, not the guards, not the horses. Only him, the oldest man in the formation. the one who was never supposed to break rank. And now he was walking straight toward the imposter. Adrian's jaw tightened. His plan had accounted for delays, for security checks, even for faulty hardware, but not for him. Callahan was never supposed to be on the schedule. He'd retired last March, a quiet ceremony, no press, no medals. Everyone thought he was gone, except a new recruit had fallen ill that morning, and the guard, ever tradition-bound, needed a replacement. The name at the top of the emergency standby list: Warrant Officer David Callahan. He wasn't a ghost. He was the safety net beneath the ghost. And now he was walking toward him, boots clicking with perfect rhythm, eyes unblinking. Adrian took one step back, just half a pace, too late. The entire formation had caught the shift, and so had the captain. "Lockdown protocol," he muttered into his collar mic. Suddenly, the atmosphere snapped. Steel doors began to seal. Security flooded the inner perimeter. The horses reared again this time, sensing adrenaline in the air. Tourists were ushered back by palace wardens, confused, nervous, but still filming. Adrian turned slowly, facing Callahan. His voice, when it came, was steady, quiet, almost hurt. "I didn't come here to hurt anyone." Callahan didn't raise his rifle, didn't flinch. "Then you shouldn't have come in uniform." Adrian's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "You still see everything, don't you?" Callahan stepped closer. Now only 10 feet separated them. The rest of the formation had frozen. Protocol was broken. There was no going back. "I see a man," Callahan said softly, "who once swore to protect this country and now wears its colors to sneak past the people who trusted him." Adrian didn't answer. His hand moved slowly toward his chest, not threatening but intentional. Callahan's voice dropped to a warning. "Don't." Adrian paused, then reached inside and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He extended it. "This isn't a threat. It's a message, meant for one man in that building. You have no idea what's about to happen, David." Callahan looked at the paper, didn't take it. "Then tell me." Adrian lowered his arm. "There's something in the guard system, a breach, and the people who planted it, they're counting on a distraction. I came in to stop it." Callahan stared at him. For a long moment, the weight of 40 years of service pressed down on his chest. Could a traitor return as a warning? But before either man could speak again, a gunshot rang out from the north wing. Both men turned, and just like that, the parade became a hunt. The shot echoed like thunder against the stone walls. Tourists screamed. Security scrambled. And in the chaos, one truth crystallized instantly in Callahan's mind: the breach was real. Adrian had been telling the truth. And now someone else, someone armed, was already inside. From the northeast balcony, smoke curled into the winter air. A soldier lay flat, unconscious, or worse, his rifle missing. The door behind him hung open. Whoever fired that shot wasn't alone. This was a coordinated distraction. The real infiltration had happened under their noses while everyone watched the parade. Callahan turned back toward Adrian, but Adrian was gone. Across the square, a guard shouted, "Man down at Sector 7, inner courtyard breached." David's blood ran cold. He didn't wait for permission. He ran, boots pounding against the stone, past confused officers and frozen tourists. Gates recognized his security badge, even after all these years, and opened without hesitation. He tore through the inner hall, past the marble busts and velvet tapestries, into the command corridor where only authorized personnel were allowed, and there, waiting in the hallway, Adrian. He held both hands in the air. No gun, no weapon, only the folded piece of paper in one hand and a security keycard in the other. Callahan stopped, 10 paces away. "You ran." "I moved," Adrian said, calm, "because the real target isn't me." He tossed the keycard. Callahan caught it, scanned it. It read, "Level 4 Royal Comm OPS, only 5 people in Britain had access to that floor." "Where did you get this?" Adrian's voice dropped lower. "From the one who invited the breach in the first place." "A beat." "You were right about me, David. I left. I disappeared. Because I found out something that couldn't be unseen. I've been tracing it ever since." Callahan looked down at the paper in Adrian's hand. "Then give me the message." "It's not written," Adrian said, voice grim. "It's recorded. From his coat, he pulled a tiny chip drive. Play it in the operations room. It logs every unauthorized command sent to Palace systems in the last 60 days, including the override issued this morning to disable cameras in the North Wing. Callahan's fingers clenched around the chip. Why now? Adrian's face darkened. Because the person behind it is on their way to erase it. Who? A silence. Then, the assistant to the chief of security. Callahan blinked. He knew that name. He'd trained that man's father, had dinner at their home once. You're sure? Adrian didn't flinch. He's been using ceremonial protocols to schedule blind spots. Every national event is a back door. Today was supposed to be his cleanup. Callahan looked at the chip, then at the corridor behind him, and made a choice. Come with me. But before they could move, the fire doors slammed shut. Red lights blinked along the ceiling. Lockdown. Someone had activated internal lockdown from inside. Adrian looked up, whispering like it wasn't meant for Callahan. He's already here. The red lockdown lights cast long, flickering shadows across the marble floor. Behind them, the corridor sealed tight. Ahead, the hallway forked into two, one leading to the operations room, the other to the South Wing archives. Adrian froze. We can't go straight. Callahan narrowed his eyes. Why not? Motion sensors. That hallway's not on lockdown, it's on surveillance. So they want us to run that way. Adrian nodded grimly. And once we do, they'll frame it. Two intruders caught fleeing the control center. End of story. Callahan glanced at the keycard still in his hand. Then we rewrite the story. He turned left away from the ops room toward the archives. The corridor narrowed, dimly lit and lined with old portraits. Names of commanders long dead stared down at them as they ran. Adrian's breath was controlled, focused. Callahan, despite his age, moved with the quiet efficiency of a man who drilled for war every day of his life. There's an access tunnel, Adrian said, beneath the storage vault. I know, Callahan replied. Adrian looked over. Of course you do. They reached a steel door marked Restricted Clearance Level 3+. Adrian entered a 6-digit code on the side panel. Nothing. Code's dead. Callahan didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, pulled the glove from his right hand, and pressed his bare palm to the glass panel beside the keypad. The scanner flickered, then turned green. Clearance override accepted. Welcome, Warrant Officer Callahan. Adrian stared. You were never retired, were you? Callahan smirked just slightly. Ceremonially, yes. Functionally, no one ever really retires from watching the front door. The door opened. They slipped inside, down a narrow stairwell with no lights, no cameras. Only silence. Adrian spoke as they descended. You know he's going to erase everything. Once we reach the ops room, it might already be gone. Then let's hope the old vault systems are still active. At the bottom of the stairs, they found it, a heavy, analog-secured terminal from the Cold War era, unplugged from all networks, untouched by modern command lines. Callahan inserted the chip, a low hum, then a flicker on the black and green screen. Lines of code scrolled. Names, dates, commands. One line glowed brighter than the rest. Override code, 4CDX72 issued by Hartley S. Callahan exhaled. Simon Hartley, assistant to the chief. He used my name, David, Adrian said. Scheduled the fake access under my old credentials. The full guy was always going to be me. Callahan clenched his jaw. Then let's make sure the fall never happens. Footsteps echoed from above. Adrian's head turned toward the stairwell. They found us. Then we upload it now. But just as Callahan reached for the upload command, the screen went black. Then white letters appeared, manual override engaged. Connection lost. Behind them, a voice called down. Gentlemen, that's far enough. They turned. At the top of the stairs stood Simon Hartley, flanked by two armed guards, calm, smiling. You weren't supposed to make it this far. Callahan stepped forward. You used the guard to breach the palace. What are you after? Hartley shrugged. Not much. Just a system that decides who gets knighted, who gets protected, and who disappears quietly. He raised a small black remote. I'd love to explain more, but this next part, it's classified. He pressed the button. A sharp click echoed through the stairwell. The ceiling lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the room, total, blinding. For half a second, no one moved. Then a faint orange glow flickered on the far wall. Backup power, old, flickering, but enough. The vault terminal rebooted with a low whir. The words reappeared. Secure boot initiated. Stand by for command. Hartley hissed. Impossible. That system was disconnected. Callahan stepped forward, voice like a drawn blade. That's the thing about old guards, Simon. We don't always follow the manuals. Sometimes we leave keys hidden in places no one checks anymore. Hartley raised his pistol. You're not walking out of here. But Callahan didn't flinch. He took one slow step toward the console, then another. Each footfall rang louder than the last. You want to erase history. You forgot who wrote it. Adrian moved too, silent as a shadow, edging around the room. Hartley noticed too late. Adrian lunged, grabbed the barrel of the gun and yanked. It went off once, loud, deafening, but the shot hit the wall. The weapon clattered to the floor. Callahan didn't hesitate. He slammed the enter key. The screen blinked. Upload confirmed. Data package sent. To National Security Archive Level 0. Simon Hartley froze. His plan, a decade in the making, unraveled in 5 seconds. His guards hesitated. Callahan turned slowly, now facing them all. His voice was quiet, firm. It's over. Lower your weapons. You were sworn to the same crown as me. The guards looked at each other and dropped their rifles. Hartley tried to run. Adrian tackled him mid-stride. No words, no anger, just control. 5 minutes later, security arrived. This time, the right side of it. Adrian surrendered quietly. Callahan handed over the data chip for verification. The captain, who had doubted him, saluted him in silence. Later that evening, in a small office just off the parade square, David Callahan sat alone. His old uniform folded beside him, a mug of lukewarm tea in his hand, a soft knock on the door. The captain entered. Parliaments cleared Adrian, charges dropped. They're calling him a whistleblower now. Callahan nodded but said nothing. And you? The captain asked. Back to retirement, Callahan said, cracking a tired smile. For real this time. The captain glanced at the dusty photo frame on the wall. An old picture, Callahan, in full uniform, much younger, standing with a boy. The captain looked again. That Adrian. Callahan's voice dropped, almost a whisper. He was going to marry my daughter. As the city fell quiet under the evening fog and the palace lit its floodlights, 2 names were added quietly to the guard's internal record of honor: Warrant Officer David Callahan and the man who almost disappeared, Adrian Shaw. Because in the end, honor isn't about never falling. It's about who you become when you rise again. Thank you for staying until the last word. Would you like a voice-ready narration version next, or visual storyboard suggestions?